The Andara sector was a lonely place, even by the galaxy's quietest standards. Stars burned cold and distant, drifting like silent watchers over the empty void. On one small ruined planet, a faint distress signal pulsed into the cosmos. It was weak, irregular, almost fading into nothingness. Yet it carried a message that resonated through the void. Help us, please. Before it's too late. Countless alien civilizations had detected the signal, many of them curious at first. Then came hesitation. Then dismissal. Some laughed at it, calling it a childish alarm or a trap. Others, more cautious, simply ignored it. Their fleets were far away, their priorities elsewhere. And so the plea continued, lonely and unheard, until it drifted across light years to a species that refused to leave anyone behind. Humans. Captain Alara Dane sat in the bridge of the starship Resolute, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The signal appeared faint, flickering like a dying star, yet perfectly clear in its desperation. The AI console beside her, a soft blue glow in the dark room, calculated coordinates, distance, travel time. Captain, the AI said, its voice smooth and neutral. The signal originates from Clyra 7, an uninhabited region according to galactic records. Probability of survival is extremely low. Ilara's lips pressed together. She knew the odds. She had studied countless signals, heard of planets abandoned, worlds burned and forgotten. She had seen the galaxy's apathy firsthand, yet something inside her refused to let the numbers dictate her actions. Set a course, she said quietly. We're going. We're not leaving them behind. Her crew looked at her uncertain. Some whispered. Some checked their instruments, calculating dangers they had no intention of avoiding. But there was no hesitation in Ilara's voice, no room for doubt. Humanity had always been stubborn, fearless in ways that didn't always make sense. They had a reputation across the galaxy, not for perfection, not for strength, but for refusing to abandon the helpless. And that reputation was about to grow. The stars outside stretched and warped as Resolute engaged its faster-than-light drive. Ilara stared out at the blackness, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. Somewhere out there, someone was waiting, clinging to life, praying that someone, anyone, would hear them. It was not just duty that drove her. It was something deeper, something older. Humans had a need to reach out, to connect, to protect, even against impossible odds, even when no one else would. Days passed as they traveled. During that time, Ilara walked among her crew, observing them in quiet moments. Lieutenant Harris checked the weapon systems with meticulous care, her hands steady, her eyes unwavering. Engineer Kimo walked through the corridors, muttering calculations, preparing for systems that might never be used. And the youngest, Ensign Lyra, sat in the observation deck, watching the stars with wide eyes, her hands clutching the railing, silently imagining the lives waiting on the distant planet. Ilara knew they all felt it, the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that they were the only ones answering a desperate call in a galaxy that had turned its back. "Do you ever wonder," Lyra whispered one evening, "why it's always us?" Ilara didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the endless stars, then back at the young human. "Because," she said softly, "no one else will. We are the ones who have to. We're the ones who care enough to try." It was not a comforting thought, but it was true. Humanity had never been the largest, the strongest, or the richest. They had never held the most influence, nor claimed the most territory. But in every corner of the galaxy there was one thing that others could not ignore. When humans saw someone in need, they went. When others turned away, humans turned toward. The days passed in quiet preparation, punctuated by brief bursts of communication with distant star charts and emergency protocols. Each member of the crew understood the magnitude of what they were about to face. No one expected this mission to be easy. Clyra 7 was beyond known space, a world with no allies, no backup, and no mercy from the creatures that had devastated it. Yet despite fear, every human on board held a spark of hope, a belief that their presence alone could make a difference. Finally, the signal grew stronger. The pulse became more urgent, more desperate, as if sensing the approach of those who would answer. Ilara's heart quickened. "Prepare for entry into the Andara system," she ordered. "This is what we came for." And for the first time since the call began, the distress signal had a response. A response not measured in algorithms or profit, not in diplomacy or treaties, but in courage and determination in humanity. The message of the stars had been received. And now, the humans were coming. When the human starship Resolute emerged from faster-than-light travel, the sight that greeted Captain Alara Dane and her crew was worse than any simulation had predicted. The planet Clyra 7, once said to be a jewel in the Andara sector, was now a world of fire and ash. Cities lay in ruins, their towers toppled, streets fractured, and smoke curled into the thin atmosphere like black serpents. The devastation was vast, the silence deafening. Alara's heart clenched as she watched the planet rotate beneath them. From orbit, tiny figures moved among the wreckage, tall, fragile aliens with translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the dying light. They scuttled across broken roads, carrying children, dragging the injured, their movements hurried and desperate. For years their cries had reached no ears, and now only humans had come. "Prepare for descent," Alara ordered, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "We're not leaving anyone behind." The landing craft pierced the smoke-filled skies, burning through debris as it approached the planet's surface. Inside, the humans worked efficiently, checking weapons, med kits, and communication systems. They had no illusions. The Clyrans, these fragile beings, had survived horrors the galaxy had refused to notice. And now it was up to them to make sure that survival did not end here. When they touched down, the Clyrans froze. Some backed away, frightened. Their eyes, large, luminous, and filled with panic, watched the humans cautiously. They had sent the distress calls, yes, but no one had come before. How could they trust these strangers from the stars? How could they believe that help was real? Alara stepped forward, her boots crunching on the blackened soil. "We heard your call," she said softly. "We are here to help." A young Clyran, no taller than a human child, trembled as it looked up at her. You are alone?" it asked, voice quivering, almost a whisper. Alara shook her head. "We are not alone," she replied. "And you are not alone anymore." Her words were simple, but for the Clyrans they were like a balm on wounds that had never healed. The sight of humans, creatures of strength and determination, standing amidst the ruin, ready to help rather than exploit, ignited a fragile hope. The humans moved quickly. They divided into teams, some searching the wreckage for survivors, others tending to the wounded, and a few assessing the ruins for potential threats. Every action was precise, every step deliberate, yet there was a warmth in their approach. They treated the Clyrans not as objects to be saved, but as equals to be protected. One human medic, Lieutenant Harris, knelt beside a small Clyran child, applying a bandage to a cut on its delicate arm. "It's going to be okay," she said gently. The child's large, tear-filled eyes looked up, and for the first time in days it relaxed. Humans were here. Humans cared, and that was enough to start healing the fear that had gripped this world. Alara walked among her crew, observing the delicate balance between efficiency and empathy. Every human understood that this mission was not about glory or conquest. It was about being the light in a darkness that no one else wanted to touch. It was about proving, not through words but through action, that life, any life, was worth fighting for. Yet as they worked, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Massive shapes darkened the sky, moving with the precision of a predator. The humans could see it now. The remnants of the Skarn fleet that had destroyed much of Clyra 7. These were the creatures responsible for the devastation, and they were returning, no doubt drawn by the new signs of life. Alara's stomach tightened. She had prepared for many scenarios, but the reality of facing the Skarn fleet on a planet that had already suffered so much was almost overwhelming. And yet she did not falter. "Prepare defenses," she said, voice calm but commanding. "We are not going to let them take this world. Not while we are here." The Clyrans, watching from behind the human shields, whispered to one another. For the first time in months, they dared to hope that maybe survival was not a dream. That maybe someone had finally come who would not turn away. As the first human teams entered the ruined city, they discovered remnants of Clyran history, statues, murals, small gardens, symbols of a culture that had survived centuries of challenges. The humans paused, taking note. They were not just here to save bodies. They were here to save a people, a history, a future. Every careful movement, every life rescued carried the message that the galaxy was not entirely lost. Alara stood atop a crumbled building, looking down at her crew and the aliens they had come to protect. Her heart swelled with pride and sorrow. Pride for the humans who had answered the call without hesitation. Sorrow for the Clyrans who had suffered so much, for the pain they had endured while the rest of the galaxy ignored them. And as the sun set over the scarred planet, casting long shadows across the ruins, Alara spoke softly to herself. To the stars, to the universe, we came for them, and we will not leave them. Not now, not ever. In that moment, something shifted. The Clyrans began to see it too, the stubborn, unwavering determination of humans, not as conquerors, not as saviors who demanded payment, but as a species who came because it was right, because someone had to. And for the first time on a world abandoned by the galaxy, hope began to bloom. The ruins of Clyra 7 were quiet, but the calm was deceptive. From orbit, Captain Alara Dane and her crew could see shadows moving across the planet's surface and hear the faintest tremors of engines returning from deep space. The Skarn had been thorough in their destruction, leaving no stone unturned, no life unscathed. And now, the predators were coming back, their attention drawn to the pulse of hope the humans had ignited. Alara's hands rested on the bridge console as she surveyed the incoming fleet. They were enormous black ships that cut through space like knives. Their engines hummed with a dangerous, almost predatory rhythm. Every Clyran on the planet's surface would know fear as soon as they appeared. Every human felt it too, but unlike the aliens, fear only sharpened their resolve. "We knew this was coming," Alara said quietly to Lieutenant Harris, who stood beside her. "They will not let anyone survive here, but we will hold the line." The Clyrans gathered in clusters, frightened and unsure. Their voices were filled with trembling questions. "They will come for us?" asked one elder, his translucent skin almost glowing in panic. Alara walked among them, her boots crunching on blackened soil. "Yes, they will," she said firmly, her eyes meeting theirs. "But you are not alone. We are here and we will fight. They will not take your home while we are breathing." Even as she spoke, the first Skarn dropships descended into the upper atmosphere. They moved with terrifying precision, scanning for life, hunting for weakness. Humans and Clyrans alike braced themselves. This was not a skirmish. They were facing a force designed to annihilate everything in its path. The humans moved quickly, almost instinctively. Engineers Chemo and Vela set up defensive barriers and improvised turrets, while medics established triage zones to treat injuries. Every action was calculated, every decision made under pressure, and yet there was a rhythm to it, a calm determination that reassured the Clyrans. Humans had not come to flee. Humans had come to fight and survive. In the city ruins, Alara led a group to secure the evacuation of civilians. The streets were jagged with broken metal and rubble, smoke curling from fires that burned like reminders of the Skarn's cruelty. Clyrans clung to one another, some carrying the injured, others shaking in fear. The humans moved among them, shielding them from falling debris, guiding them with firm hands and gentle words. "Stay close," shouted Ensign Lyra, pulling a small Clyran child to safety. The child's large eyes brimmed with tears, but for the first time in weeks it felt protected. But even as the humans rescued and defended, the Skarn ships in orbit began to make their move. Energy beams lanced down toward the planet, obliterating what little cover remained. Smoke and fire mixed with the screams of terrified Clyrans. The humans countered, firing turrets, launching small craft, and maneuvering the Resolute with precision that seemed impossible. Alara's mind raced. She knew they could not hold the Skarn for long. The fleet was too large, their ships too powerful, their intent too cruel. And yet every human there was willing to stand, willing to fight to the last breath, not for conquest or glory, but for lives that were not their own. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris said, her voice tense but steady, "we're running out of time. We need a plan that will buy the civilians enough time to evacuate." Alara's jaw tightened. She glanced at the trembling Clyrans around her and felt the weight of responsibility settle like stone on her shoulders. "We fight them where it matters," she said firmly. "We give them a reason to retreat. We protect as many as we can, and we will not fail them. Not now, not ever." The humans and Clyrans worked together, a fragile alliance born from necessity and hope. Humans carried the injured to safety. Clyrans provided guidance through the shattered city, and together they set traps and fortifications to slow the Skarn advance. Every life saved was a small victory. Every human standing against the overwhelming odds a message that resonated across the battlefield. And then, as the first beams of the Skarn flagship struck the ruined plaza, Alara stepped forward, her voice carrying across the chaos. "Hold your ground!" Protect them. Do not let fear rule you. The Clearans froze for a moment, then, inspired by the humans' courage, they moved with determination, helping where they could. And the humans, unyielding, pressed forward, shields raised, weapons firing, hearts determined to survive against impossible odds. In the midst of fire and smoke, amidst terror and chaos, the humans became more than rescuers. They became symbols. Symbols that someone would always come when others turned away. Symbols that courage could exist even when the galaxy had forgotten hope. And in that moment, the Clearans began to understand. The humans were not just a help. They were the hope itself. The skies above Clyra 7 burned with fire and light as the Skarn fleet descended. Their ships, dark and massive, blotted out the stars, their engines humming like living predators. Beams of energy shot down to the surface, smashing through buildings, tearing the ruins apart. The Clyrans screamed and scattered, but the humans held their ground, unflinching. Captain Alara Dane stood at the forefront of the defense, her eyes scanning both the skies and the trembling civilians below. "Remember why we are here," she shouted to her crew. "We are not leaving anyone behind. Fight for them. Fight for their lives." The humans had no illusions. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had already destroyed worlds without mercy. But humans had something the Skarn could not understand. Courage fueled by compassion, bravery born from the refusal to abandon others, and a relentless determination to protect life, no matter the cost. Lieutenant Harris coordinated the defensive turrets while Ensign Lyra guided Clearan survivors to underground shelters. Engineers Chemo and Vela improvised weapons from the ruins. Laser cannons scavenged from abandoned factories, repurposed energy shields, even makeshift drones carrying small explosives. Every human worked with precision and speed, moving with a rhythm born of desperation and hope. The first wave of Skarn dropships landed, disgorging squads of monstrous alien warriors. Their claws tore through rubble, their weapons fired indiscriminately, their presence meant only death. But the humans stood firm, shields raised, weapons ready. They met the Skarn with a ferocity that surprised even the aliens. "Hold the line," Alara yelled, charging forward. She fired her pulse rifle with steady hands, taking down Skarn after Skarn. Around her, humans and Clyrans fought side by side. The Clearans had never known true courage until now, and seeing humans risk everything for them sparked a fire in their hearts. They fought where they could, helped the injured, and learned quickly to trust in these strange creatures who had come to save them. Explosions shook the ruined city. Fires blazed across the streets. Every human casualty was felt deeply, yet no one faltered. For every human that fell, 3 Skarn attackers were destroyed, and still the humans pressed forward, relentless, daring, unstoppable. The Resolute hovered above the battlefield, its weapons firing with precision, targeting Skarn ships that threatened the planet. Small human fighters darted among the massive alien vessels, striking fast and disappearing before retaliation. Humans adapted, improvising tactics on the fly, exploiting weaknesses the Skarn had never expected. Alara could feel the weight of the planet on her shoulders. Every life mattered. Every soul they saved was a victory against despair. She moved from group to group, shouting encouragement, directing energy, carrying wounded herself when she had to. There was no hesitation in her actions, only determination. In the heart of the ruined city, a Clearan mother clutched her child, crying as a human soldier placed herself between them and the advancing Skarn. "Go! Get to safety," the human shouted, pushing them toward the shelters. Then, without pause, she turned back, facing the monsters that were coming for them. It was not a calculated tactic. It was instinct, the raw, unstoppable drive of a species that refused to abandon life. The battle raged for hours. Skarn ships fell from the sky, their energy cores erupting in flames. Human fighters maneuvered in daring patterns, striking where the enemy was weakest. The Clearans, inspired by the humans, began to fight more boldly, helping to evacuate survivors, setting small traps, and aiding in the defense wherever they could. Through the chaos, Alara felt a strange warmth amid the terror, hope. Humans had arrived where no one else had, stood where no one else would, and fought where others would have fled. And in doing so, they were showing the Clyrans something they had never known: that life could be defended, that courage could overcome fear, and that the galaxy was not entirely lost. The Skarn were powerful, but humans were unpredictable. They struck with precision, moved with daring and fought with the knowledge that surrender was not an option. Their hearts burned with a fire the Skarn could not understand, the fire of determination, of empathy, of hope. By nightfall, the first wave of Skarn retreated, forced back by the humans' relentless defense. The skies were still streaked with smoke, fires burned in the ruins, and the city was scarred, but the Clyrans had survived, and they knew deep in their hearts that it had been humans who had saved them, not just with weapons, but with courage and a refusal to leave them behind. Alara lowered her pulse rifle, exhaustion heavy in her body, but satisfaction burning in her chest. She looked out across the battlefield at her crew, battered, tired, but unbroken. They had fought not for glory, not for reward, but because it was right. And in that moment, humanity's presence became more than a lifeline. It became a legend, a promise written across the skies of Clyra 7. The humans had fought, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it meant to truly protect life. They had arrived when no one else would. They had faced the impossible and held the line. And though the battle was not over, a seed of hope had been planted, one that would grow long after the smoke had cleared. The skies above Clyra 7 were alive with fire and movement. Skarn ships darkened the heavens, vast and menacing, their engines thrumming like predators circling a wounded prey. Beams of energy streaked toward the planet, smashing through ruined buildings and lighting the surface in blinding flashes. Panic swept across the remaining clearance, but the humans stood firm, unshaken by the chaos. Captain Alara Dane watched from the command post, her heart steady despite the overwhelming odds. She saw the fear in the eyes of the Clyrans below, the terror of a species abandoned by the galaxy, and she knew it was her crew's duty, not just to fight, but to inspire courage where it had been lost. "Remember why we are here," she shouted. "We protect them. No one is left behind." The humans moved with an almost instinctive coordination. Engineers Chemo and Vela activated energy barriers and redirected power to improvised turrets. Medics hurried to create triage zones for the wounded, while Ensign Lyra guided Clyran civilians through smoke-choked streets toward temporary shelters. Every move was precise, every decision made under pressure, yet executed with calm determination. The first wave of Skarn dropships landed, disgorging squads of monstrous alien warriors. Claws tore through rubble, energy rifles fired indiscriminately, and their presence radiated death. But the humans met them head-on, shields raised, weapons firing, hearts burning with resolve. Alara ran across the ruins, her pulse rifle steady in her hands. She pulled a wounded Clyran child from the rubble, handing it to a medic. "Go!" she shouted. "We've got you." She turned back to face the Skarn, unflinching, leading by example. Her courage became a signal to everyone around her. Humans fought not because they had to, but because they could not bear to leave others in danger. Explosions rocked the city. Flames licked the edges of crumbled buildings. Each human casualty was felt by the crew, but no one faltered. For every human that fell, multiple Skarn attackers were taken down, and still, the humans pressed on, fearless, relentless, and unpredictable. Above the battlefield, the Resolute hovered like a guardian. Its weapons fired with precision, targeting enemy ships threatening the planet. Small fighter craft darted among the massive Skarn vessels, striking fast and disappearing before retaliation. Humans adapted, improvising tactics, exploiting weaknesses the Skarn had never anticipated. Alara's mind raced. They could not hold forever. The Skarn fleet was too large, their ships too powerful, their purpose too cruel. And yet the humans continued, driven by something beyond strategy or survival. Their strength came from empathy, from the refusal to abandon life when it mattered most. In the heart of the ruined city, a Clyran mother clutched her injured child, frozen with fear. A human soldier stepped between them and the advancing Skarn, weapon ready. "Go," she commanded. "Get to safety." The mother hesitated, then ran, pulling her child along. The human turned back to face the enemy, unafraid, willing to give everything to protect the innocent. The battle raged for hours. Energy beams seared through the ruins, firestorms consumed the streets, and smoke filled the air. But humans, unpredictable and daring, continued to push back. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and traps set amid the wreckage. Their courage became a weapon just as powerful as any pulse cannon. The Clyrans, inspired by the humans, began to act. Some carried supplies, others helped the wounded, and a few even attempted to sabotage Skarn equipment. They moved with a new purpose, guided by humans who had shown them that survival was not just possible, it was worth fighting for. As night fell over Clara 7, the first wave of Skarn ships retreated. The sky remained streaked with smoke, the city scarred and burning, but the humans had held the line. Every Clyran saved, every human standing tall was a testament to a species that did not abandon hope. Ilara lowered her rifle, exhaustion heavy in her limbs, but satisfaction burning in her chest. Her crew gathered around her, battered but unbroken. They had fought not for honor, not for fame, but because it was the right thing to do. And in that moment, the humans were more than rescuers, they were legends, symbols of hope etched into the ruins of Clara 7. The Skarn had underestimated humanity. They had assumed weakness, fear, and surrender. But they had not counted on courage born from empathy, on determination fueled by a refusal to abandon others. And as the stars shone over the scarred planet, one truth became clear. Humans did not just fight, they fought to protect life, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. And for the Clearans watching from the shadows, the humans had become something more than heroes. They had become hope incarnate. The battle for Clara 7 had raged for hours, and the planet was scarred with fire and smoke. Skarn ships circled above like vultures, their weapons tearing into the city below. The humans were exhausted. Their shields flickered, their weapons overheated, and yet not one human considered retreat. They had come to save lives, and they would not leave a single soul behind. Captain Ilara Dane stood on the roof of a crumbled building, surveying the battlefield. Civilians were still being evacuated through narrow corridors of rubble, guided by humans and a few courageous Clyrans who had found newfound strength. But the Skarn fleet was relentless. If they did not act, Clara 7 would fall, and with it the fragile hope the humans had brought. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris reported, her voice tight with tension, "we cannot hold them much longer. The Skarn flagship is too powerful. It's directing the fleet with perfect coordination." Ilara's jaw tightened. She knew they needed a bold move, something that would turn the tide against impossible odds. Her eyes fell on the experimental weapon stored beneath the city, the gravitational pulse generator, a massive device designed to create a shockwave capable of repelling ships in orbit. It had never been tested in combat. It was risky, but what choice did they have? "Prepare the pulse generator," she ordered. "This ends now one way or another." The humans worked with precision and determination. Engineers Chemo and Vela carried crates of equipment through the rubble, their hands steady despite the chaos around them. Medics continued evacuating the wounded, and Ensign Lyra, young but fearless, helped coordinate the Clyrans, giving them confidence they had never known before. As the humans activated the generator, the ground trembled. Energy rippled outward like invisible waves, spreading across the planet and into orbit. The Skarn flagship shuddered, its engines failing as the gravitational pulse disrupted its systems. Smaller Skarn ships caught in the shockwave spun out of control, colliding or retreating in disarray. Ilara felt a surge of hope. The impossible was happening. Humanity's gamble, born of courage and determination, was working.
"Keep firing!"
she shouted.
"Push them back."
"Protect our people!" The humans, despite exhaustion and fear, fought with renewed vigor. Their pulse rifles, makeshift weapons, and the Resolute's cannons worked in perfect synchronization, targeting the Skarn wherever weakness appeared. The Skarn were powerful, but humans were relentless, unpredictable, and driven by something stronger than technology, the will to protect life at all costs. Below, the Clearans watched in awe. They had never seen such courage, such selfless bravery. Humans fought not for power, not for victory, not for conquest, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Every fallen human was mourned, but their sacrifice inspired others to stand taller, move faster, and fight harder. The pulse generator reached its peak. The Skarn flagship, massive and terrifying, trembled before the invisible force. It wrenched against its restraints, its weapons going offline. The smaller ships, previously coordinated in their assault, were thrown into chaos. Humans seized the moment, striking with precision, overwhelming the disoriented fleet. Ilara ran through the city, shouting encouragement, moving among her crew as they pressed forward. Her voice carried over the chaos. "We protect them. We fight for them. We are humanity. The Clearans joined the effort wherever they could, guided by humans. Some carried supplies, others helped clear rubble, and a few even sabotaged the Skarn weapons left behind. Each act, no matter how small, added to the humans' advantage. They were no longer just defending, they were turning the tide. Finally, after hours of relentless struggle, the Skarn fleet began to retreat. Their engines glowed faintly as they pulled away from Cleara 7, unwilling to risk further losses. The planet was scarred, but it was alive. The humans had done the impossible. They had come to a world abandoned by the galaxy and had fought back an enemy that no one else dared confront. Ilara stood on the rooftop again, looking at the damaged but surviving city. Fires still burned, smoke still rose, but the people below were safe. Humans had arrived, risked everything, and proven that courage, determination, and empathy could defy even the most overwhelming odds. A young Clyran approached, tears in its large, luminous eyes. You saved us," it whispered. Ilara knelt, resting a hand on its fragile shoulder. "No," she said softly. "We didn't save you. We fought with you, and we will continue to fight wherever life needs us. That's what we do." The Clyran stared, awe and gratitude shining through its fear. For the first time, it understood something profound. The galaxy was harsh, cruel, and often indifferent, but humans cared. Humans came when no one else would. Humans fought when others fled. And as the Skarn retreated into the darkness of space, the humans of Resolute and their brave crew on the ground had made a mark that would never be forgotten. They had turned the tide not with overwhelming numbers, but with courage, ingenuity, and the unwavering refusal to abandon those in need. Ilara stood tall, watching the first rays of dawn touch the scarred landscape. She knew the battle was not over, and the planet had much to rebuild. But for now, humanity had shown what it was capable of. A spark of hope that would light the way for a species long abandoned, and for a galaxy that had nearly forgotten what courage looked like. And in that moment, Cleara 7 began to believe again. The first light of dawn broke over the scarred surface of Cleara 7, casting long shadows across the ruins. Smoke still rose from shattered buildings, but the chaos of the battle had faded. The Skarn fleet had retreated, leaving the humans and Clarans standing among the ruins. Exhaustion weighed heavily on every human, but their hearts were light with the knowledge that they had protected lives that no one else had dared to save. Captain Ilara Dane walked among the survivors, her boots crunching on the debris-strewn streets. The Clyrans emerged from hiding, hesitant at first, their large, luminous eyes filled with a mixture of fear, awe, and hope. They had been abandoned by the galaxy, left to face annihilation alone, and now they had humans, strangers from the stars, standing beside them, unbroken, unwavering. One Clyran, an elder with skin shimmering like liquid glass, stepped forward, trembling. You came," it said, voice breaking. No one else came." Ilara knelt to meet its gaze. "We didn't come for reward. We came because it was right. Because someone has to care when others won't." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of humanity itself. The Clearan's shoulders sagged, relief washing over its fragile form. Around them, humans moved quietly among the Clyrans, helping to tend the wounded, distributing water and food, and organizing shelter. Engineers repaired generators, medics set up clinics in the ruins, and soldiers guided frightened Clearans to safety. Every action was careful, deliberate, and infused with a quiet compassion that the Clyrans had never experienced. A small group of children played in the rubble under the watchful eyes of a few human soldiers. One child approached Lieutenant Harris, offering a small flower that had survived the fires. Harris smiled, gently taking it and kneeling to meet the child's gaze. "This is yours," she said softly. "Hold on to hope." Hope, something the Clyrans had long thought lost, was blooming again. Humans had not only fought for them, but they had shown them that life was worth protecting, that courage could overcome despair, and that the universe, despite its cruelty, could still harbor kindness. Ilara gathered her crew for a brief moment, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. "We did more than fight," she said quietly. "We reminded them, and maybe ourselves, that life matters, that someone will always come when others turn away." Her crew nodded, proud yet humble, knowing they had been part of something greater than themselves. A young Clyran, no taller than a human child, ran up and clasped Ilara's hand. You saved my family, it whispered. You are different from the others. Ilara smiled softly, kneeling so they were eye to eye. We are human, she said. And humans come when others won't, that's who we are. The child's eyes widened, and a smile, a fragile, real smile, spread across its face. Across the city, other clearings gathered around the humans, offering simple gifts. Small stones carved into shapes, delicate plants, and other tokens of gratitude. Every gesture was an attempt to express something words could not fully capture: relief, respect, and awe for a species that had arrived when hope seemed lost. Even the elder who had spoken earlier approached, his voice now steadier. You have shown us courage, he said. You have risked everything for beings who are not your own. The galaxy has forgotten us, but you have not. We will remember this forever. Ilara felt a lump in her throat. The Clyrans were a fragile species, often overlooked, but they now had a chance to rebuild, to survive, to thrive. And humanity had been the spark that lit that flame. As the humans prepared to return to the Resolute, the Clyrans gathered to see them off. Their large, luminous eyes were filled with gratitude and awe. Some were crying, others were smiling, but all were silent witnesses to the courage of a species that had come when no one else would. Ilara stood at the boarding ramp, looking back at the people they had saved. We will be back if you ever need us, she promised. But even if we don't return, remember this: courage exists, hope exists, and you are not alone. The Clyrans nodded, tears glistening on their translucent skin. They had learned something profound. The galaxy might be indifferent, cruel, or silent, but there was one species that defied apathy. Humans came for others, not for glory or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. As the Resolute lifted off, the Clyrans watched the human ship disappear into the sky. The ruins of their city were still smoldering, but their hearts were lighter. They had survived, they had hope, and they had been reminded that even in the darkest corners of the universe, someone would come when all seemed lost. Ilara sat in the cockpit, exhausted but proud. She looked out at Clyra 7, scarred yet alive, and smiled faintly. Humanity had not just fought. They had healed, inspired, and reminded an entire species that they were not forgotten. And in doing so, they had left a mark far greater than any battle victory. They had left hope. The skies of Clyra 7 were calm now. Smoke still curled from the ruins of the city, but the fires of battle had died down. The Skarn fleet had retreated beyond the horizon, and the Clyrans were beginning to rebuild their lives. Amid the wreckage, a quiet sense of gratitude hung in the air, heavy and profound. Humanity had come, and the galaxy had witnessed something remarkable. Captain Ilara Dane stood on the deck of the Resolute, looking down at the planet below. Tiny figures moved through the rubble, humans and Clyrans working side by side to restore a semblance of life. She felt a deep swell of pride. They had come when no one else would. They had fought against impossible odds, and now they were leaving behind a legacy that went far beyond any battle won. Lieutenant Harris approached her, exhaustion written on her face. They're safe. For now, she said. And you were right, Captain. They needed us, Ilara nodded. They still do, she replied quietly. But now they know that someone will always come when the galaxy abandons them. That knowledge, that hope, is stronger than any weapon. Below, Clyran leaders gathered with their people, sharing stories of the humans who had fought for them, who had shielded them from death, who had carried their injured to safety when the Skarn thought all was lost. The stories would be told for generations, a testament to courage, selflessness, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. A young Clyran child ran toward the humans on the landing pad, waving a handmade token, a small figurine of a human holding a Clyran child in its arms. It was simple, crude, yet perfect in its meaning. Ensign Lyra knelt to accept it, her eyes glistening. We'll keep this, she said softly. It will remind us of why we fight. The elder who had first spoken to Ilara approached once more, bowing with a reverence that made the humans pause. You have given us more than life, he said, his voice steady now, full of awe. You have given us courage, hope, and the knowledge that we are not forgotten. The galaxy may ignore us, but humanity came. Ilara felt a lump in her throat. It was not often that humans were praised for what they did naturally, protecting those in need. But hearing it spoken with such reverence, from beings whose lives had hung in the balance, was humbling. "We did what we had to do," she said softly. "We came because it was right. That is all any of us can do." The Clyrans nodded, understanding in their luminous eyes that humanity's actions were not exceptional because of strength or technology, but because of their heart. Humans had chosen to care when others had turned away. Humans had stood against impossible odds because life itself was worth the fight. As the Resolute lifted from the landing pad, the Clyrans watched in silence. There was no fear now, only awe, gratitude, and a deep, abiding hope. They had survived, and they had been shown that courage could exist even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Humanity had left a mark that could never be erased. Not on their planet, not on their hearts, not on their memories. Ilara looked back one last time at Clara 7, her chest swelling with pride and determination. "We'll always come," she whispered to herself. "No matter the distance, no matter the odds, we'll always answer the call." The ship engaged faster than light travel,